Hello neighbors, it's Brad here from eTrailer, and today we are taking a look at installing the TowSmart Trailer Hitch receiver on a 2022 Hyundai Santa Fe. And adding a hitch to really any vehicle is a great addition, whether you're going on bike rides, going on vacation, or doing some work around the house and need to pull a small trailer. A hitch really opens up as to what you can do with the vehicle. And the TowSmart's going to be a great option, so let's take a closer look. Once installed, the TowSmart hitch looks great because it's going to be a hidden cross tube, meaning really the only thing that you're going to see is going to be the 2" by 2" receiver tube opening and the plate style safety chain loop. Now, 2" by 2" is kind of the standard size when it comes to trailer hitch receivers, so that means you're going to have a ton of options when it comes to bike racks, cargo carriers, or even ball mounts. But all of those are going to stay in place with a 5/8 pin and clip. Sometimes manufacturers will include their own proprietary ones with accessories, and they're included. But if you don't have one, a 5/8 is going to do the job to keep those in. Now, also, something I'd recommend is if you plan on leaving something on your hitch, whether a bike rack for the season or a cargo carrier while you're on vacation, a locking pin and clip is a really good deterrent from anyone just walking by. They won't be able to take out the pin and clip and that accessory with them. Now, if you plan on towing, the plate style safety chain loop is super wide open, so it's going to make it super easy to hook up your safety chain. So whether you have a standard S hook, a clevis style, or even a large clevis style, shouldn't be an issue. Now, if you're towing a trailer or just using accessories with this, you want to make sure you're not overloading it. And the first thing I'd do is check the vehicle's owner's manual, see what the vehicle is capable of towing, and then compare that with the hitch. You want the lowest number, that way you're not overloading anything. Just because the trailer hitch can handle it doesn't mean the vehicle can. And this one's actually rated really good. Coming in with a gross trailer weight rating of 4,000 pounds. That's the weight of the trailer plus the accessories loaded onto it. That's a really high capacity. You really don't see that too often with smaller SUVs, so pretty impressive. And when it comes to the tongue weight, that's going to be a lot of your suspended accessories. So bike racks and cargo carriers, this one is 600 pounds, and that is a lot. That means a 4-bike rack with e-bikes loaded up shouldn't be an issue, or a cargo carrier on vacation fully loaded up should not be an issue as well. Now, when choosing accessories, you may find that bike racks and cargo carriers, some of them have the availability to stow in a vertical position, which is really nice. It cuts down on the overall length of the vehicle, so when not in use, you can kind of just stow that up. But you do want to make sure that it can work with this vehicle. The issue that sometimes people run into is the fascia sticks out too far and it just can't stow. So measuring from the center of our hitch pin to the furthest point of our fascia, it's right at about 4 inches. So I'm not too concerned, but things that you're gonna want to think of is when they're in that vertical position, it's probably gonna block your license plate as well as your rear view camera and potentially even your taillights. So just something to be cognizant of when you have those in that stowed position. Something else that's going to be important is our ground clearance. So from the top of the receiver tube opening to the ground, this one's coming in right at about 13 inches. And not that I think that this is going to bottom out, but it's mostly going to be helpful when you are choosing a ball mount. So if you're pulling a trailer, you want everything as level as possible going down the road. So the best way to figure that out would be to get your trailer, if you have it available, measure from the ground to the top of the coupler when the trailer is nice and level, and then compare that with our measurement. And from there, you can determine the rise or drop necessary to get everything level. You could always get an adjustable ball mount to kind of cover the spread. And that way, if you don't know what your trailer is going to be height-wise, you can account for that. But more than likely, I would guess this to be a slight rise. But again, kind of depends on the trailer that you're going to be towing. Now, you're probably on this page because you're looking to see what it takes to get this installed. And this one's not that hard to do, but there is a potential that the weld nuts that are in the frame where the hardware goes in are going to be corroded. And we ran into that with ours today. Don't let that hinder you from getting a hitch installed. So if that's the case, you can reach out, find someone close to you to get it installed by using our dealer locator. You simply put in your zip code, you'll find a list of shops close to you that can get the hitch installed. If you're adding wiring, they can do that at the same time. That way you don't have to worry about the install and you can be out on the road enjoying adventures. For you DIYers, it's not too terrible to do. You can do this in your driveway or garage with minimal amounts of tools. I would recommend an extra set of hands to raise the hitch up, but beyond that, I'll be walking you through step by step to make sure we get this installed. So let's take a look at that. Now, to begin our installation, we're going to be needing to lower down the muffler. So this is definitely something that you can do in your driveway or garage, but something that you're going to want to do as we lower down the muffler, that's going to give us access to be able to bolt the hitch up and slide it into place. But we also want to make sure it's not just dangling down, causing damage upstream. So I'm going to be doing this on a lift, obviously. If you're doing this at home, you can use the box that the hitch came in, but just have something to support this. And we'll get started by lowering down our isolators on our exhaust. So pretty easy on this vehicle. We'll have an isolator right here that's super visible. There's one that's kind of close to the tire on the outside of the frame rail, and then we have one that's on our cross member. And these are really flexible. This one's pretty easy to do. You're just going to grab a pry bar or a long flathead screwdriver, and you can use this as leverage to pop off. Now, this one's fighting me a little bit, and what you can do to help that along is just put some soapy water. Sometimes that rubber will start to kind of adhere to the metal, and that soapy water will really loosen it up, making it a lot easier. So this one's fairly easy, but I will spray down my other ones, seeing that I'm struggling with this one a little. In this back one, you can use the hanger as leverage. So I'll just kind of pry on here. And before I get my cross member one removed, I'm going to support mine with a cam buckle strap. So this is when you just put your box or something here. Having a little bit of extra wiggle room will help obviously give us space here, but also you just don't want this free hanging. So I'll spray this one here. So as that drops down, I have my cam buckle strap just supporting the extra weight, and that really opens it up to where we can get our hitch raised up and our hardware put in. Now, something I should say is if you have a spare tire, you do want to lower that down so we can get everything in place. We don't have one on ours today, at least under here, so we can move along with that. So just to kind of point out where we're going to be going with our hitch, we have 2 holes in the frame, one on the bottom, and it's going to be a mirror image on the other side. The hitch is going to bolt up to the frame rail, and this rubber plug, we want to remove these. There's one on each side, and that's just going to make sure that the metal sits nice and flush. So we won't be reinstalling these. So if you want to just pry those out with either a screwdriver, I just have my pocket knife here. We'll just take those out. And very important, being in the Midwest, we get a lot of salt on the roads when it's winter, and these holes are all threaded. So in simplest forms, we're just raising the hitch up, and then these bolts are going to just thread in here. But the issue is, especially after a couple years, all of that grime kind of builds up in those threads and becomes rust at times. So before we even raise the hitch up, we want to make sure our hardware is going to be easily able to pass in here. So what I'd recommend doing is take one of your bolts and thread it in. Now these are fine-tooth threads, so they're a little tricky, and already you can see I'm kind of running into resistance. So what you can do is try to snug this down until it draws all the way up. If you really can't even get it started, you may have to use a tap to go in here. And unfortunately, that is the case for some vehicles, but also a penetrating oil, spraying it in there will help loosen up that rust. We have 2 brushes here that you can kind of clean those out, and they'll do a good job. But the main thing is we go through each of these holes before raising the hitch up. There's nothing worse than trying to support the hitch and trying to get this started, and it won't. So I'm going to use penetrating oil. I'm going to grab my socket and run these all through, make sure everything's nice and clean. So I've sprayed penetrating oil in all of them, just kind of help lubricate it. And then with a 3/4 inch socket, I'm just going to buzz these in. Now, if it's giving you a ton of resistance, don't continue, because you can actually damage the threads either inside the frame or on the hardware, and we don't want to deal with that. But it should buzz in. It'll knock some of that rust loose. And once you do that, it's really going to make it easy to where you should be able to thread it in by hand. And this is what we're looking for. So go through all 6 holes and make sure that they're nice and clean. So now that those are all cleared out, I got Scott to help me raise this up, and I do recommend having an extra set of hands because as we raise this up, we're each going to have a bolt on hand with a conical tooth washer. Teeth will be facing towards the metal on the hitch, so just get it set up like this. And as we raise this up, you can choose any of the spots that are accessible. The bottom one I think is probably the easiest. And then what we're going to do is just try to get a few threads started on each side, and that way the hitch is supported. It'll make it a lot easier to thread in the rest of the hardware. Now once you've started all the hardware with the conical tooth washer, we're just going to snug everything down using the 3/4 inch socket. And we don't need to get crazy here because we're going to come back and torque it, but this is going to help draw everything up. I would recommend doing the bottom ones. That'll take the pressure off of these ones by drawing it up first. So we'll buzz these up first. Once everything's snugged down, we'll come back with that same socket and a torque wrench. And torque settings are found in the instructions. And for this one, it's fairly low torque setting. So if you need to go out and get a torque wrench, you can rent one at an auto parts store for free. But this is going to be important to make sure that safely you can use your hitch. It's also not going to be too tight, putting stress on the weld nuts or any of the hardware. So we'll go through and just get all of this torqued down properly. Once everything's torqued down, your hitch is officially installed, but you do want to get your exhaust put back in the isolators. And something that they put in the instruction manual is if you're having any issues with your muffler going back up or even having rubbing against the bolt or the hitch, I would recommend following their tip of bending down the exhaust isolator a little bit. And the reason being is even if it goes up, if that's against the metal of the hitch, you're going to get exhaust rattle and you're going to get clanking every time you drive the vehicle. So to make it a little bit easier, what you can do is you can grab a box end wrench, preferably a smaller one than what I have, or you can take this isolator off. And we're just going to make a slight bend. They say 5 to 7 degrees, which I'm going to just eyeball it here. We're just going to draw this down. So that way it's going to be a little bit lower and give us a little more clearance in this area. So with a box end wrench, just you can put it on this kind of collar here at the end and then just push on this and it'll slowly bend it down. You may have to, I would recommend grabbing a pretty large one if you can, but doing this is going to draw this down, put the isolator a little bit lower, keep the muffler out of the way of making contact with the hitch. Now, once you have your exhaust put back in the isolators, you are officially done. All that's left to do is load up your accessories, put it in your pin and clip, and you're ready to hit the road. Now, throughout this installation, I really try to make sure that this is going to be easy for DIYers like you at home. So if there's anything throughout the entire installation process that I could have done better, or maybe been clearer on, or maybe you have some tips that might help people out, please leave them in the comments. That really helps us make our videos as best as possible for neighbors like you that are going to be tackling this at home. With that all being said, thank you for joining us for a look and installation of the TowSmart Trailer Hitch Receiver on a 2022 Hyundai Santa Fe.